carry on. The comments there, but from the managers and some of the comments from people watching at home there is interesting. I'm not sure, and I've obviously expressed my opinion over the last while on Danny Rohl, but Ryan Stevenson also touches on it in the bit when I caught up with him earlier. That was not a good interview. It was not a good reaction. It certainly wasn't inspirational. And I think Rangers have got some serious reason to give a lot of consideration to what they do now with Danny Rohl. You asked me previously, Dan. You know, I felt that he's got enough backing from the boardroom level, from Andrew Cavenagh. I think that he's probably done enough in their eyes in terms of clawing back ground and getting Rangers into a title fight that looked impossible when Russell Martin was in charge of it. But the main thing for me was Andrew Cavenagh was there last night, and if he didn't realise that what he was watching was a really experienced, shrewd manager completely outwitting and outmanoeuvring the guy in his dugout, I'll be surprised. That would strike me as being wholly naive, and I don't think Andrew Cavenagh is a wholly naive guy. So I think what follows from this might become very interesting. I also said to you, Dan, when was it? After Rangers had lost to Motherwell in the first game, which was effectively the day they blew it. But I pointed out an interesting stat that Danny Rohl had come up against the four kind of, how would you say, the four managers that have been most highly praised for their contributions, their work throughout the course of the season. And Martin O'Neill, John McGlynn, Jens Bertolascu and Derek McInnes. 10 games against them, and he'd only taken 3 wins. Well, that's 11 games now, and it's another defeat. And knowing that the Americans run their sporting sort of businesses very much through decisions made by data, I think that's going to punch a massive hole in Danny Rohl's data in terms of can they have full confidence in him to go into next season, because it looks to me like an inexperienced guy who, when he comes up against really good operators, he struggles. And we spoke last night about his decision making, which I thought went all over the place in the second half. I think he took too long to react to the changes that Derek McInnes made. When he did finally react, it was too late in the day. He left Skov Olsen on until I think it was like 69 minutes. And that was an obvious change, which could have been made 5 minutes into the second half. It was made, I think, 16 minutes after Hearts had equalised. That's not reacting quickly enough. It seemed obvious to everybody else inside the stadium that Hearts had the momentum. They were on the ascendancy. They were actually gaining complete control of the game, and he did nothing. I also think he should have put on Connor Barron, because it was becoming obvious that Rangers were losing the midfield battle. And Diomande, I thought, to me, he looked as if he was blowing hard at that point. I
thought it was interesting as well, Keith. No Scots in Rangers starting lineup.
Well, so I think if he puts Connor Barron into that midfield battle, I think he stands a better chance. I think that Connor Barron's energy and his legs and his determination and his kind of battling qualities might have helped to turn that around in Rangers' favour, middle of the pitch. Connor Barron didn't get on at any point in the game. And then there was the other substitutions, taking off Nico Raskin and Mikey Moore, and then resorting to just throwing every striker or forward player that he had on his bench onto the pitch and losing all semblance of shape or strategy. I think that was a really bad night for Danny Rohl, compounded by the way that he kind of addressed his post-match duties there. I don't think it was an impressive night at all for him.
Well, we've got plenty of comments coming in, Keith. Your Wi-Fi might not be working, but everyone else's is. So they've been sending in the comments, and let me throw a few of these at you. Luke says, it's not good enough, Rohl. The buck stops with you. John says, the YTS manager has been well and truly found out in this title race. Paul says, does this mean Rangers will steal a march in Celtic and go for Bertalascu? David says, it's the money he's spent why Rangers fans are starting to show their rage. Marzuno says he's certainly a big game specialist, just not the way Rangers fans would want. Although Foxy Lad says Rohl will put it right on Sunday by ending Celtic season.
It doesn't matter though. I mean, it'll matter to Celtic.
Season's over. Aye.
It'll matter to Celtic. But as Scott McDermott said last night, would it surprise you with this Rangers team? No pressure on Danny Rohl, no pressure on the players. Yep. Yeah, they've got a free hit at Celtic. And all the pressure, especially if Hearts win at Motherwell on the Saturday night, all that pressure rolls over to Celtic Park, but only on one side. Rangers don't have any pressure. And that seems to be the kind of games that they like. Yep. So no, that would make no difference whatsoever to Andrew Cavanagh's considerations over the course of the next few weeks. I think he needs to have a long, hard think, because I think he's been pushed into these decisions. When Andrew Cavenagh first arrived in Scotland, or before he'd even arrived, his time, his focus, his whole concentration was on simply trying to get a really complex share deal done to get control. And I think if he had that time again, maybe he'd think he was a little bit guilty of just assuming that he was making good appointments and delegating big footballing decisions to the likes of Kevin Thelwell. And I think Rangers have paid a heavy price on the pitch for a lot of those decisions. Mm-hmm. And obviously Danny Rohl was a guy, very much a Kevin Thelwell-driven appointment. So yeah, I think there's a lot to consider. But I genuinely think that must have been a real eye-opener for him last night. Because in the heat of the battle, when he needed someone to lead from the side of the pitch the way that Derek McInnes was doing for Hearts, Danny Rohl was found badly wanting.
In the comments, to finish off a couple, Stephen says Rohl will be relieved his duties at the end of the season, maybe even after a pasting from Celtic on Sunday. And Rebel says the truth is, if Rangers employed McInnes, they would have won the league this year by a mile, given Celtic's managerial musical chairs this season.
I 100% agree. Not only would Rangers have had Derek McInnes in their dugout, but Hearts wouldn't have had him in theirs. So
exactly, yeah.
You might not even have had the three-horse race. It might just have been the usual two suspects. But with Celtic performing the way that they've performed this season, I think Rebel makes a very good point, not for the first time.